Can you tell us a little bit, is this staying true to the Michael Crichton book, or is it the movie, or?
I never read the Michael Crichton book.
Okay. But it is based on
Or if
that,
I did,
right?
I don't remember.
But it is loosely based on?
Oh, yeah, yeah. And it's kind of very much like the movie, but not. And I can only say that I don't have a very good memory of the first film. It was a long time ago, and I'm an old Jew.
Me too.
But this has Michael Solomon, and that means that even as I read the script, there were scenes that I knew were going to be something, because he's a great, great cinematographer.
So when you watch something, well, when you perform in something like this, do you take it home with you? I mean, because I know when I read the book and saw the movie, I thought, I don't think I want to ever have surgery.
Well, I felt that way before the film, so yeah, there are times, but not in movies. You know, everyone forgets that in movies you're working for 3 minutes at a time, and whose life is it anyway? People would say to me, God, how could you hold still for that long? And it wasn't. It was for 3 minutes. When I did it as a play, that was something. But film is completely different. It's a different ball game, totally. There's no audience, and everyone who's in the room with you is not is not looking at you. They're working. You know, even the director no longer looks at the actors. He looks at Video Village, and so you're working with the other actor you're in the scene with, and that's about it.
What's sort of your process to prepare for a part when you get the script? And
you know, for a person who really prides himself on being articulate, that is the one subject I know nothing about.
That's right.
I don't know
right.
the whys and wherefores of what I do. And the only way I've ever described it is that I can see the character across the room, and I have to walk across the room and get into his clothing, if that's helpful.
Yes.
And sometimes, oddly enough, because people know that I'm political, they were expressing this kind of, wow, how could you play Dick Cheney? Or wow, how could you play Haig? And I said, every actor likes to play bad guys. I mean, that's a myth, you know. And then, just as Yitzhak, I would say, there's a little bit of Cheney in all of us.
I think that.
Have you ever looked across the room and saw that costume you're going to put on, and once you put it on, realized there was something different about it? That the character became somebody completely different than you thought he was going to be?
It's a good question. No, but I have 6 months later gone, oh shit, now I know how to do it. You know, that I've done.
Okay.
But no, I've never, if you include, I used to do a lot of plays at the Taper, and we'd go to Gordon's house and do a reading. And I was doing a reading of Robbie Bates's play, 3 Hotels, and I had never read it, so I didn't know the next line. And that's the way I like to do that. And I was halfway through the play before I realized it was not a comedy, it was a drama. It wasn't a drama, it was a comedy. And I went, oh. So
when you looked across the room for this character, what did you see?
A very familiar character. You know, I would say, you've seen this character 100 times. Now it's a question of, what is Richard going to do to make it interesting? So, but the character himself is someone you've met 100 times.
So what do you bring to it that's specifically you?
You gotta pay your money. It's against the actor's oath to tell you that. I can't really do that.
They make you swear in.
Well, you want that. You don't want to. I love to surprise people. Every actor does. I'm not, giving away any big secrets. I will say that Jimmy Woods and I are in this film together, and as it was originally written, we didn't have any scenes together. And I went up to Mikhail and I said, "You're going to put Jimmy Woods and me in a film, and we're not going to have a scene? That's stupid." Because everyone wants to see that.
Mm-hmm.
And so they wrote a scene. And it was a good scene. And then we surprised everybody by working against it. And so even Mikhail was surprised at how he played it. It was great.
So is that your favorite scene, or do you have a different favorite scene from the film?
No, that's it. That's it. There's some people that you just like to... You want to do a film like My Dinner with Andre,
Mm-hmm.
with certain actors. I want to do Virginia Woolf with Bette Midler. I want to do certain films, certain stories with certain people. And with Jimmy, I would have loved to have played a bigger, longer stretch of character, because it wasn't long enough.
Does the medium where you're presenting these stories matter to you? I mean, is TV as interesting to you as film, as theater is, or are they all just sort of the vessel that delivers?
No, they're very different. Very different. A feature, even if you're discontinuous and you're not shooting in sequence and all that, the whole story, beginning, middle, and end. And then you leave and you do all sorts of other things, You invade Normandy and go to jail for sodomy and stuff. And then a couple of years later they say, "Come to the opening." And you go, "Okay, well, what is that?" They ask you to relate to it as if it happened yesterday. Television is surprising in that it has an open-ended quality. You can, if you're doing a show, say, why don't we play around with this? Why don't we make him a schizophrenic, or why don't we make him a sexual obsessive, or whatever? And you can. And that's, as a matter of fact, what happened with Weeds.
Mm-hmm.
In theater, the beginning, middle, and end, but you also know, in a sense, the future when no one else does. You have 3 hours continuous when you know what happens. And so it's kind of like a science fiction experience. And also you have a live audience, which makes all the difference. And I would rather have that than anything. There's no payoff in films. I mean, there's a payoff of a large salary, and there's a payoff in all that other goo. But there's no payoff as an artist, unless you're totally self-contained and serene, and you have a black belt and good. I don't.
So you mentioned you're working with James Woods and kind of conspiring to change the mood of this scene that you guys did together, and that there's sort of a subversive element to that. I'm wondering if that's sort of a general part of your personality, or something that you enjoy in terms of being just subversive like that.
No, it's not. I don't think of it as subversive. I think of it as good theater. And I was taught by Stephen when we did Jaws. When you watch Jaws, you see 100 little stories told in the movie. and each one of them has a beginning, middle, and end. Bup, 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 bup. There were times when there was a shot of my tennis shoes, and then walking along the side of the ship, and I didn't realize until later that that was the beginning of a scene, the beginning of a moment. And so there's that. But there's nothing to compare with having an audience laugh or concentrate on you in the same room. And that's when you understand when Shakespeare says an actor holds up a mirror to reality, because acting is the only art form that is built entirely on pretense. Every other art form starts from truth. And acting is the exact opposite. You pretend the clothes you're wearing are yours. You pretend the words are yours and the moves you're making are yours. You pretend you can't see the stagehand over here. And you pretend you can't see the audience. And the audience pretends that they're not watching a piece of theater. They pretend that they're watching reality. So it's all a house of cards, and it builds truth. And that's different.
So what kind of mirror do you think the current project is holding up in terms of the truth that it's?
Well, I don't know about in terms of mirror. I wouldn't use that word. I would say that it fulfills its requirement. It's a thriller. Hopefully, it'll make you go, ah! You know.
Fair enough.
And if it does that, it's done its job.
And if you had to pitch the series in 30 seconds or less for people to tune in, what would you say?
What would I say? You know, all those thoughts you've ever had about doctors, they're true. Yeah, my secretary went in for a dental thing, and 20 years later was still going back to get it fixed right. I said to her, I spoke once to 2,500 psychopharmacologists in Boston, and I can honestly say that they'll never forget that speech. Because I said, are you sure that you're scientists? Does the data hold up? Could you not be, for instance, artists and not know it? Because artists and scientists work under the same evolutionary compulsion to progress mankind. And the difference is that doctors always act from certainty. And the only thing that doctors can say with certainty, let's say 50 years from now, is, boy, 50 years ago were we stupid. I mean, and that's a truth. Aspirin's good, aspirin's bad. Aspirin's good for heart attacks, aspirin's bad for heart attacks. Lay down, stand up. You know, they change everything.
Isn't that why it's a practice?
That's why, that's right. I said to my father, why don't we practice Judaism? He said, I don't have to practice, I'm very good at it. And doctors, I worked at a hospital for 2 years. And so I saw the mentoring that must happen. Older doctors teaching young doctors. You have to know that your hand will not tremble when you cut open a living human being. And if you get the wrong doctor as a mentor, you will not learn the proper proportion of empathy. You will learn arrogance, and you'll learn a lack of empathy. And we know, I mean, every one of us at the table knows horror stories about that. And it's one of the frailties of mankind that we have yet even begun to think about. But we don't know. That's why I did this film, Let It Ride. And my favorite line in Let It Ride is, "You never know. Even when you know, you never know." And that's doctors.